Welcome back. So the Imam says, the person on whom it is obligatory is anyone who is free, Muslim and legally responsible. So you need to be free. That means you can't be a slave to somebody, or you can't be in prison and not have your own liberty. You need to be Muslim. So a non-Muslim cannot perform Hajj. Indeed, it's forbidden for a non-Muslim to enter the holy city of Mecca and Medina. And to be legally responsible, i.e. not a child. And able at the time when the people of his locality leave for the Hajj. So the normal preparations for Hajj normally take a few months. And if it's a caravan, then it takes a few months for the caravan to be set. If it's bookings and tickets and visas in nowadays and vaccinations and everything, again it will take a few weeks to a month even to be ready at that time. And if you miss that time, so even if you can arrange your own affairs, but you've missed that time, and for you to then make your own affairs and then leave and not be able to get there on the time and the Hajj would have started, then obviously this doesn't fall under that. So what it means here is to be ready at the time when the preparations are taking place. If you become ready slightly after this time, then you wouldn't be obliged. The obligation wouldn't be upon you to catch it for that year. Obviously then it would be the following year. So of his locality to leave for the Hajj to afford provisions and transportation. So you must have enough money for your journey there, for your stay there, for your journey back, and to leave sufficient money for your family to survive while you're away. And depending on where you are in the world, this could be 6 months, it could be 3 months, it could be 2 months, 1 month, or 2 weeks. So to leave enough provision for them, because in the olden days before modern transportation, people would take, it was like a round trip over like a year even sometimes, and they would actually bid farewell to their families as if they were seeing them for the last time, because obviously the rigors of travel, medication wasn't around as it is today, hostile territory, wild animals, deserts and areas of no vegetation and everything they had to pass, and there was a chance that they wouldn't come back. So to make sure that you have enough money to cover everything. In excess of for one's dependents until his return, and in excess of one's other basic necessities. So also what this means is that if you have enough money, but you know that it's going to be barely enough. So you've got enough, but it's borderline enough in the sense that I have enough if I only eat 2 meals every 2 days, or I skip a breakfast for 9 days and then I can have a breakfast, right? Or I can only have a sandwich a day, or I won't be able to stay in a hotel or in a tent. I'll have to sleep under the sun for 3 of the 6 days that I'll be there, or something like this. This doesn't mean that you are obliged to go now, or that you actually have enough. Because no, you don't have enough, because according to your locality, according to your style of living, according to your background and everybody around you, your culture, this is not how you live. You're going to be living in a way that you're not accustomed to, and it's not your norm in living like that. So that doesn't mean that you have enough. You must be living in a reasonably comfortable way. Reasonably comfortable doesn't mean 5-star hotels or comfort in the sense of extravagance. No, comfort means that you're not sleeping in the open sun. You're not sleeping on hard ground, unless this is your way of living. You've lived like this where you just happen to sleep on the ground, right? Okay, then if you have a tent and you put the tent over you and you can live on the ground like that, that's fine. But someone who's never done that before is not expected to do that. Or for example, long journeys. The only way you can afford everything else you can afford: the eating, the staying, the money for the parents at home, money for the journey. But the flight, the only way you can go is if your flight is a long haul flight that involves a 1 week trip. It goes from here to here, and then there's a layover, then it goes to destination C, destination D, destination E, probably returns back. Something crazy like this, right? Where it takes you 3 days of messing around before you get there, or 5 days to get there, unnecessarily. Sometimes, yes, it's understandable, you can have a 12-hour layover, But remember, the longer the layovers get, there's a chance of illness and sickness. So everything needs to be factored in. The obligatory requirements for its performance are a sane, healthy body. So again, you need to be sane, not mad, or somebody who's sick physically or mentally, who has recurring bouts of madness. So he can't be trusted to get there and be responsible for himself to complete the Hajj and get back in a sane condition, or not to go missing. Some people who have mental illnesses, sporadic, they are a liability upon themselves also and others. To be healthy in your body, if you're sick, if there's a chance that you're going to get even sicker, if you've got a sickness, the doctors have advised you, you're sick, this is not the right time to go, you'll die before you even get there. Or because we're talking about caravans, or even if it's a long haul flight, then it makes sense. Obviously, you're not physically able to go. So you need to be healthy in body and mind. Prevention of any physical barrier on the journey. This is talking about imprisonment or wanted by the courts or something like that. Prevention by a barrier, physical barrier. If you're in prison, then you're behind bars. You may have the means, you may have the wealth. It's obligatory upon you now that you have the wealth, but these are the conditions we're talking about. You're behind the barrier, right? You are financially, you're able to, but physically you're not able to in this instance, in the sense that you're behind the barrier. Your health is there, your mind is there, your finances are there, but you're behind the barrier now. Safety of passage based on reasonable assumptions. In the olden days, it was very, very difficult, to say the least, to travel in any area by any mode of transportation, be it camel, donkey, mule, horse, walking. And especially Hajj journeys, where you have people who are traveling from northern climes or extreme southern climes to areas that are close to the tropics, desert areas that are very hot, arduous journeys that they're not used to. And on top of that, you have highway robbers. There are always going to be brigands and robbers and highwaymen on the way. That is factored into every journey when they travel on a journey, right? Every caravan has factored this in. Sometimes they have negotiators where you have to pass through certain areas and you negotiate with the tribes of those areas, who then you pay them a fee, and all this is factored in. And then they protect you from one stop to another stop, and then it carries on. This is how the traditional mode of transportation was, especially with trade goods. And in today's age, that doesn't really hold true. You can just get a flight and you're safe. But in the olden days, and especially where you'd probably pass through, it's possible for you to pass through areas of plague, or passing through areas where there was war or civil strife, or just a general lack of total law and order or safety. So again, in situations like this, there's no way for you to penetrate, to go past this area. Then again, this condition of going wouldn't fall upon you. Haven't met the condition. If you could bypass it and still get to Mecca on time, or if you could fly by another route, right? Because sometimes you can't fly over certain countries. If you can fly over another route, then obviously you do that. If it's absolutely impossible for you to bypass this, and there is a real danger that your life will be taken, then obviously you haven't fulfilled the condition. You don't fulfill the condition. So it says reasonable assumption. The reasonable assumption here is that yes, we know there's going to be highway robbers on the way, and there may be a slight firing of rifles. We're talking about 100 years ago and more. Or a few flash of swords will send them scampering, or maybe there will be some skirmishes, and this is the norm, right? If this is the norm in every area of the world, this is how it was 100 years ago, then obviously this is considered reasonable for them. But in today's times, certainly this doesn't hold true, especially when you can fly there. And for a woman to not be in her waiting period, her iddah lasts for 3 months. And for her not to be in this period, if she's in this period when the preparations are taking place, then obviously she hasn't fulfilled the condition. She needs to be free to travel, and to be accompanied by her husband or unmarriageable kinsman, mahram, who is trustworthy, sane, and an adult. So either she has a mahram with her that she can go with, or a husband. Husband isn't put in the same category as mahram here. Husband is a husband, someone she can marry, and a mahram would be unmarriageable kin, such as a nephew, a brother, a father, grandfather, uncle, someone that she can take, because women cannot travel on their own. They need to take a mahram, and that mahram needs to be trustworthy, sane, and an adult. He's sane for the same reason, a liability. He's a liability to himself if he's not sane, and a liability to her also. And he doesn't fulfill, obviously, the condition of mahram because he can't protect her. There's nothing he can do for her. An adult here, an adult is obviously a very small child. There's not, there's, for obvious reasons, you be taking care of the child. The child would not be able to look out for you. However, if the child was, say, 12, 13 and of very large build and everything, then obviously that child would be able to protect you. And the understanding is here, in the very least, that the child knows what it means to be a mahram, escorting a lady on this pilgrimage. So, I mean, the scholars mention that if somebody is talking about her, he will understand and he will say to them, listen, do not talk about my mother like this, or do not talk about my sister like this, do not talk about my grandmother like this. Something like that. Being trustworthy, if there's nobody available but an uncle who's not trustworthy, he could put her in danger because of his own actions, or he's somebody who's not trustworthy in the sense that he could attack her, then obviously he wouldn't fulfill the conditions here. So that was the conditions which we looked at, and we'll carry on with a reading on the Hajj soon, inshallah. وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.